of The Witching Hour. I am Perri Nemroff, and of course I am here with my co-host. It's Haleigh Fouch. Haleigh, how you doing?
Good. How are you?
Pretty good, pretty good. How you feeling about the color orange, do I dare ask?
Color orange works great during Halloween season. Clashes with red lipstick. That's my take on this backdrop.
You know,
as a fan of red lipstick.
Red lips, and I'm wearing a red shirt, so right. I guess I clashed today. I don't know why I said it like that. I guess I clashed today, but
you make it work.
Yeah, and it's the conversation that matters, right? And we're gonna have, I think, a fairly fiery conversation today is what I'm predicting. We are talking about two new wide releases, and of course, they are the Meg and Slender Man, both of which hit theaters last weekend. We're going to talk some spoilers here, but just right off the bat so everybody knows how you feel about the Meg, a non-spoiler review of the Meg. What are your thoughts?
I enjoyed the Meg. I feel that both of these movies feel like they're kind of out of time, like they were made for another era, and the Meg feels very 1993 to me. Which I love.
Was a good year.
Yeah, it's fun. It's like a goofy, big, giant B movie, and I dig that. It's not amazing, but it's a fun shark movie, and I got pretty much what I wanted out of it.
I will second all of that. Again, not amazing, but I actually think they did a better job than I was anticipating, because originally I was concerned because I love that book, and I still need to read the other books in that series, but I was a big fan of that book, and I was also pretty surprised by how dark and sinister and how based in science it actually was. I found all of that very interesting, and when they attached Eli Roth to direct it, I thought at least we would get the violence and the terror on the R-rated level, but then Jon Turteltaub stepped in, and we knew that wasn't going to be the case. But for a Jon Turteltaub-directed shark movie with Jason Statham, I thought he wound up checking the boxes in terms of fun, action, summer flick, but also there was a darkness to it that I didn't quite expect, where I think the movie took itself just seriously enough to get a little bit of a balance there. So that's pretty much why I liked it more than I was expecting to.
Yeah, I didn't pick up on a lot of the darkness or anything. It was pretty much exactly what I was looking forward to from the trailers. And it's interesting because both Statham and Turteltaub have talked about how they wanted to make it R-rated and darker. And I guess maybe what you're picking up on is the remnants of that original plan.
Yeah, I suspect that might be the case. But, should they have gone dark given how much the movie made? Because the movie turned out to be a huge success. I didn't think it was going to come anywhere close to, at this point in time, the estimates have it at $44.5 million domestically. And I didn't think that was possible whatsoever. I mean, the large majority of box office predictions and projections I saw last week were all around $20 million. And I was suspecting that it was going to underperform because I didn't think I heard enough talk about it leading up to the big release. But, I was reading a Deadline article that did a little bit of a deep dive into Warner Brothers' marketing campaign. And, they talked a little bit about what they were doing when the movie performed so well on Thursday night, and then they tried to maximize on that success by deploying certain tactics that targeted people to create this sort of halo effect where they were going to get foot traffic instead of pre-sale traffic. And maybe I'm just making up excuses for why my predictions didn't hold, but whatever they did, it seems like they were reacting to things in the moment, and that served them very well because that's a lot of money.
It is. That's a really big opening, and I don't know much about what you were just talking about, the strategy on the ground, but that would make a lot of sense. I feel like it had a pretty big and fairly effective marketing campaign because I believe both times the trailers came out, they became a big topic of conversation.
Funny thing was, one of the things in that Deadline report was that they never released a typical second trailer. I think they were putting more effort into kind of retooling or re-promoting that first trailer, which I found really interesting. And, when I say I don't think I heard very many people talking about it. I tend to tap into not necessarily us in the office, but certain people in my life. It's like I have like those people that I know if that person's talking about it, it's kind of breaking the barriers into more than just the audience that specific campaign is targeting. And usually that's my family and my cousins.
Right.
And,
Same for
and
me.
Stuff like that.
My mom and my aunt knew what the Meg was, and
Yeah.
they were interested in it, which is not always the case for the things I care about. So they had a wider reach, I think, than your average shark movie. But also shark movies are like having a moment. So that's The Shallows made a ton of money, and I think I take for granted because these movies did make a lot of money that their opening weekends were bigger than they actually were, because I just looked it up, and The Shallows ultimately made 119 worldwide, but the opening weekend was only 16.
Yeah.
So it's like...
It
the
was
Meg's
a
pretty
low
enormous.
production budget movie, though.
Yeah.
This one has, the steeper hill to
Big
climb
money.
in that respect. $130 million reported production budget, and of course, it doesn't include marketing and advertising,
Right.
but a global start for this movie of $141.3 million, and they performed very well in China, which was a goal for this movie,
Of course.
and overseas overall. It seems that the studio is happy with the numbers that it produced, and it's going to be interesting to see if the movie has legs after the fact. I'm curious to see how much it holds up.
I think it seems like the ideal kind of late summer movie. Just light, fun, easy action entertainment. You can pretty much take anyone to it. There's some shark stuff that's a little spooky, but nothing that's really terrifying.
Yeah, I wouldn't say so. I mean, there's some not human gore, but shark gore that comes to mind that might be a little off-putting for some. But
Yeah.
I mean, this is the
Nothing.
perfect definition of a ride movie. That's what it
Right.
felt like to me. I was on a wild ride with this team of scientists.
Yeah.
And I think that was the intended effect.
I think they got that right. I mean, I rewatched like so many shark movies recently, and there are some that really get under your skin and are hard to watch, and I wouldn't recommend to certain people.
Like?
So like the it's interesting because it depends on what like bothers you.
Yeah.
For me, I am deeply terrified of the ocean.
I know where
and
you're going with this.
Yeah, 47 meters down was an intensely...
not what I expected.
No.
But given the claustrophobic vibe of that movie, I'm not surprised
Oh,
that
that-
that's the one that you named.
That one made me physically sick. Like I was sitting there like dry heaving in my bed, and I had to stop it. And the sequence where she's completely surrounded by blackness in the
Yeah.
ocean when she's swimming, I was like, no, pause, please stop what you're doing to me. And then there are other ones, like obviously Open Water has that effect as well. But in some
That's
of
where
them,
I thought you were going.
Open Water doesn't mess me up as much because they're not stuck underneath the water, which is an added layer of hating the ocean and being so scared for me.
That's true.
But if you're like more bothered by gore or blood, there are obviously other ones that are a bit more effective in that way. I found The Reef, even though there's not a tremendous amount of gore, really effective. And like when the blood does happen, it was
The
very
Reef?
upsetting.
I've never
Yeah.
seen that one.
It's good. It's a little Australian film. I want to say around 10 years ago. And it's got these really strong, likable characters for the most part. It's kind of slow because there's only like 4 people, and once they get out in the water, like it's a lot of back and forth about what they should do to survive. But I was, every time, somebody got et and there was a big blood puddle left behind, I was very upset by it.
I will put that on the list. I
It's
love how you're like a blood puddle and I'm upset. I'm like, well, that's
I'll
going on
see
my
it.
watch list.
Well, the other thing I liked about that one, it has this character who actually knows what the hell he's doing. He works on boats professionally, and he lays out some very hard choices for them and is like, but this is why this is a smart one, even though they all suck. And you really root for him because he's not an idiot.
It's nice getting some of those in these movies.
Yeah.
All right. Jumping into some Meg spoilers here.
Yeah.
I'm curious your take. Like is this a cast full of people who don't know what they're doing, or did
Yeah.
you believe them?
I don't. So talk about some idiots.
Oh.
Like the main Li Bingbing's character in the first act is a moron. outright moron. Totally deserved to die.
That's probably one of the dumbest decisions in the movie, to just completely disregard the entire team you have around you and to just hop into
I'm not
one
trained
of those
at all
things.
for deep water rescue,
But I'm gonna go.
I'm doing it.
Yeah, that was a pretty big problem for me, a logic problem. But I will say that I believed Jason Statham as Jonas, which was a big success for me as a fan of the book, because Jonas in the book, like, he is a scientist.
Yeah.
He knows shit, you know? And then when you cast Jason Statham in a role like that, I start to look at it completely different. And I didn't want to completely strip Jonas of that. And it's not like he's walking around spewing science facts all over the place. It's just his behavior in the movie. He exudes this confidence, and not just this, I'm an indestructible action hero confidence. It was whatever he was doing, I kind of believed that he knew the best course of action, and that was just inherent in his performance and his behavior, and I appreciated that.
Absolutely. I love Jason Statham. Like,
He is really just wonderful.
I'm obviously known for my horror fascination and passion, but B action movies are like my other favorite thing in the world. I love this guy, and I think it's really cool that they took away basically guns, fighting, driving cars, all the things he usually does on camera, and then he still pulled it off with that, like, I got this quality that you're talking about.
He was very, very easy to root for, and even though I didn't like certain characters in this movie, I found the group overall very easy to root for. Whenever they were on screen together, I was kind of enjoying the dynamic. But with Lee Bingbing's character, I was definitely disappointed. I was looking forward to seeing her in this movie, and I don't really think she got the best material to work with, so no fault of her own, but I found her a little disappointing. I also really wanted more of Jessica McNamee, because I thought she did a great job in the first act sequence, and then... You know, we're talking spoilers now, so she's rescued, and she comes back at the end of the movie. Another thing that I thought was a little bit of a stretch, given the accident in the first movie and what happened in the first part of the movie and what happens to her. She should not be on her feet or near the water anymore, but she is. And if she is going to be there, let her do something. Don't put her in the background.
I agree with that. She was one of the most engaging parts, and I remember watching this and going, I don't remember her from the trailers. Is she a big character? Because she was so big in the first act.
I believe she's a big character in the second book in the series, or at least that's what someone told me, because I don't remember that character from the first book.
All right. Well, and I also love Cliff Curtis always.
He's great.
He's like a perfect addition to any ensemble cast. And he had, those three in particular had Jason Statham, Jessica McNamee, and Cliff Curtis. I would want to be stuck in a shark situation with them.
Yeah.
Like, they feel competent and capable.
So here's the other question. Ruby Rose, confident and capable, or?
She was fine. I don't know what happened with the hair situation. Made her very hard to take her seriously.
Yeah.
But otherwise, I thought she was fine.
I thought she was totally fine. Where, I found the hair a little distracting. That's actually a real thing. I mean, I know some out there might be, oh, you're just nitpicking now. No, there's costume and hair and makeup choices that can become distracting to a point that they take you out of a movie and they ruin a certain character for you. I didn't like that choice. I found her very convincing as, you know, like the computer hacker of sorts, like her just sitting there at her terminal. And I believed what she was doing and that she knew what she was talking about. The killer scene for me, for her, though, was the cry scene. Oh. I said this in my little non-spoiler review. There is one cry scene in this movie that is hands down one of the worst cry scenes I've ever seen, and it was that. It was that. For that moment, it completely ripped me out of the movie, and I'm like, oh no, like, this is hurting me to watch a little bit. But I thought she was fine otherwise. But then I also have to consider the fact that, you know, she was one of the smaller roles in the ensemble. Otherwise, that was her big moment, and it didn't hit the mark for me.
Yeah, that's fair. No, there will be no awards for that scene. I like her, though. I like her presence and ease on screen. I think there are ways to utilize her well. That kind of a scene is probably not one.
Yeah, I suspect she is an actor with limited range, but if
Yeah.
you play within that range,
Yeah.
you will do well with her because there is something about her that's appealing, but the fact that she doesn't have range can prove to be a problem.
Could be a problem, yeah, for someone who acts professionally.
My other favorite in this movie was the young actress who plays Li Bingbing's kid in the
She was
movie.
very
Her name
cute.
is Shuya Sophia Kai, and talk about she toes that line between real kid and cute actor kid
Yeah.
so well in this, and she has such great chemistry with Jason Statham. I really couldn't get enough of her.
She was really cute, and that's kids are tricky. Most movie children, I think. I am not interested in being a part of a film. I would prefer the film without the child in it, but she actually made it better.
Well, speaking of children in movies, also because we were just talking about Extinction on Netflix recently.
Oh, right.
Those kids.
I still haven't seen it.
Those
I probably
kids,
won't see it.
They doom the parents. Like, I understand they're your kids, kind of, but they make all the worst decisions. I mean, come on,
Don't
just
let
listen
children
to
make decisions.
Yeah.
Ever.
What's with that? The other person in this movie who shouldn't be making decisions but does is Rainn Wilson. And I was surprised that I wasn't over his character within seconds of seeing him
Yeah.
on screen. But I thought he played that role pretty well because, again, we're in spoiler section right now. He's got a little bit of a twist that comes at the end. And I think he plays into that to the point where, I caught myself wondering, like, oh, does he really have a heart? No,
Right,
he
no,
doesn't.
Nope.
And it was fun to watch.
I enjoyed him, and I also thought he would just be annoying to boot. But Rainn Wilson's a likable dude. I enjoy watching him. I think the cast was really well put together. It's obviously incredibly intentionally put together. It's like so international.
Yeah.
Like I would be curious how many countries they hit.
Yeah.
Between the cast members.
They did hit a lot.
But they're all really good. I do feel a little bad for Li Bingbing because that she's capable than more than what she was given. She also, I mean, it's to be expected. She wasn't 100% on the English dialogue, and that's par for the course in these types of films. My biggest problem, I guess, in that area was you talk about the good chemistry that the kid had with Jason Statham.
Yeah.
I didn't feel that she and Jason Statham had any chemistry, which was especially bad because with his ex-wife, I was like, oh, they still got the thing.
And they had good chemistry,
Yeah.
too. It's like, I think it was the hospital scene. That scene played pretty well. And, of course, it had the kid in it, too. It was like my three favorites in the movie. Yeah, I thought that was unfortunate. One other thing that I thought really worked in the movie's favor was the way they created and depicted the shark.
Yeah.
I was surprised how good the shark looked, and
Looked really
I will
good.
bring up something that someone else said to me because when we went to our screening, we didn't see it in 3D.
No.
And someone told me the shark looked awful in 3D. Which I guess I wouldn't be all that surprised
Yeah,
if we're
that doesn't
talking about
surprise me.
a post-conversion situation. But based on what we saw in 2D, I think it was very well rendered. And then they also captured it in a way that, created a little bit of a, whether you're talking about the water blocking it, some darkness blocking it, the people in the tubes blocking it. I just think it was shot in a way that kind of, maximized the effect of digitally created fake shark in a way that made it look pretty good and as realistic as I would imagine a Meg to look.
It's a tall order. Like shark movies, I think, are hard to pull off often anyway because nature's very difficult to recreate. Or if you're using footage of actual sharks, it's hard to cut them together with the footage of the actors in a way that looks natural. And then you go, oh, but it also has to be 75 feet. Like, that's a huge challenge. And I think by and large, the film really, really pulled it off. I do wish they had got freedom from the studio to go a little further.
Yeah.
I respect the decision to hold off on the reveal of the shark for the first half hour or so, but at the same time, I'm also like a little conflicted because the marketing campaign was so all about, like, pleased to eat you and like a giant shark movie.
Well, that's another reason why I think the box office wound up being as high as it was, because all of a sudden I think they kind of realized, we do have to play into the horror comedy of this, not just the horror and the scares of a shark coming to eat you. And I think in the end that worked in its favor, but I hear where you're coming from.
Maybe it doesn't even have to be the shark. I just guess I wanted more creature stuff, because even the giant squid was so cool and we didn't get anything.
Yeah.
It was like one quick moment, and if we were going to spend all that time down there under, in the sub layer of the sea or whatever, I would have liked to see some more crazy stuff. And it's weird for me to say that, because the sort of benchmark, obvious benchmark is Jaws, which was, hinged on not showing the creature that much. But the Meg ain't Jaws, where you're not there for the character drama. You're there for the giant shark.
I will say, though, the first act, I think that whole scenario played so well to me that I wasn't busy looking around for other creatures. That to me was the one part where I think the character drama actually did work. That pressure of being trapped in that little vessel and trying to, the race the clock. Oh boy, I can't speak today.
It's Monday.
Race the clock quality. Race the clock quality, where I think the only thing that almost sucked the energy out of that sequence was when Li Bingbing is just like, hey, I'm going to hop in this, and that makes no sense whatsoever. But otherwise, them being trapped down there and the lack of communication with the main facility, I found that to be very powerful and suspenseful, to the point where I had just met those three individuals and I'm already worried about them.
That's good.
Yeah, I like that. One other thing I wanted to ask you, because we're pretty divided on this movie in the Collider office. So me, you, Wendy, and my buddy Erlinger all went to go see it at the same screening.
Yes.
Then the rest of the guys saw it at a different screening. We came back having really enjoyed ourselves. They came back with the exact opposite impression of the movie, and I suspect it might have something to do with our screening. The crowd reaction was pretty much on point, where I think people were reacting the right, or the way that the filmmakers intended.
Yeah.
Whereas, as they described it to me at least, folks were laughing 20 minutes in. They were. It seemed like their audience was checked out within 20 minutes and laughing at things that weren't meant to be funny. So what do you take from that?
That's interesting. I do think the crowd experience is important. I lamented to you the two different crowd experiences I had seeing Hereditary.
Yeah.
One which was one of my best movie-going experiences of my life, and the other where the film was essentially ruined for everyone by a few idiots in the theater. And bad projection. Guys, fix your projectors. So that's a real thing. I'm also I think I know who these guys were who went to see this movie, and it was never going to be their movie anyway. But it's funny because I feel like the Meg, it doesn't invite you to laugh at it, but to laugh along with it, to have fun with it. So it's a strange one to be like, I'm cooler than this movie, because the movie's not trying to be that cool.
Yeah. I was a little disappointed to hear that, but the Meg is also one of those movies where I think, the theatrical communal experience is kind of an important thing. It's like you are, again, you're going on this ride and you're going on it with this group of people.
Yeah.
And, I guess that's the case with any movie, really, where it is very possible for the audience reaction to kind of set the tone and affect your own impression of it. And it's just unfortunate in this situation when you really enjoyed a movie and some other folks that you wanted to enjoy the movie can't because of that. And I'm not pointing a finger and saying, because you all moviegoers didn't like it, you're ruining it for other people. No. I mean, no, that's not the case. It's just, it's something that is kind of out of your control to a point.
It is. So this was I'm just curious, this was a press screening? Mm-mm. No. Okay. See,
not a press screening.
Probably a bunch of teenagers being dickheads, to be honest.
Maybe.
That's whenever I have a problem with people just disrespecting the film and laughing at inappropriate times and not being willing to take a film on its own terms. It's usually a group of kids who want to look cool.
I guess so. I mean,
and that is I remember being an idiot kid who wanted to look cool, so I get it.
I guess I get it. I mean, we're going to revisit this exact topic when we talk about our next movie, but I don't know. I just maybe I'm too like quiet and reserved. But even when I was a teenager going to see crazy horror movies, I never got that feeling where I wanted to shout at the screen or something.
I distinctly remember being about 15 or ish. Yes, I'm old. It's fine. Going to see Jurassic Park 3 with a group of friends, and we just couldn't keep it together. We laughed through that whole movie.
I'm glad I wasn't in that theater.
Yeah.
I would have been mad at you. I remember seeing that for the first time when I was on my teen tour. You ever hear of a teen tour?
I sure didn't.
Really?
No.
So, all right. Well,
Is that an East Coast thing?
It's an East Coast thing, probably. But it's a good transition from sleepaway camp. Sorry, Mark Ellis, not really. But so when you finish going to sleepaway camp at a certain age, or at least in the community that I grew up in, the next, step towards adult summer activities, I guess, or that sounds weird too, but you know what I mean? Like as you grow up.
Like work.
I guess. Like an internship or something, is you go to sleepaway camp, and then when you hit a certain age, you go on a teen tour. And a teen tour is, it could either be like a month to 2 months, and you travel the country. You could travel to other countries, but
that's cool.
Mine in particular was traveling up and down the West Coast, and I had never been. So I think I was like 14 or 15, but we started in Park City, Utah, went down to San Diego, and then all the way up the West Coast. And I believe when we hit Hollywood, we went and we saw Jurassic Park 3.
Oh, yeah. Then you guys enjoyed it. You did not laugh.
I mean, I have a built-in love for the Jurassic Park franchise where it does not matter how silly or stupid those movies get. I will always enjoy being in that world. And I think Jurassic Park 3 was a prime example of that being the case.
I've become like the resident defender of Jurassic World 2 on the .com.
So I watched that on the plane on my way back to L.A. on Sunday night, and I don't get it. I understand the ending is a little silly. I understand why people aren't a fan of the gymnastics scene, but it's pretty good across the board.
Solid. This has some of the best set pieces in the whole damn franchise.
The trailer set piece. I love the long grass scene with the raptors. I love when Dieter gets eaten by the compies. I think that's great. I could go on and on. I think there's so many great sequences in that movie.
Jurassic Park 3 is really the only one I don't defend. I don't really vibe with that movie, but all the rest I'm here for.
Yeah.
Even the new 2, I'm like pretty much here.
Yeah. I mean, I understand the gripes about Jurassic 3, but I can't help it. I like those movies way too much.
Somehow we found a way to make our Meg talk about Jurassic Park, and that feels very on brand.
It does. It's only a matter of time before Scream emerges in the conversation.
Exactly.
Right now, though, let's go into the the one that might cause a little heatedness here in this episode. It's Slenderman. So Slenderman.
Dude.
I've got feelings about this movie, feelings that were very present before I even saw the finished feature, and I'll bring it back to when they first dropped that trailer. So when they announced the Slenderman, I was never that into creepypasta. I never followed it. I didn't really care about Slenderman, or not care, but I wasn't aware of Slenderman until that terrible true story came to light, and then it was reported, and then I looked into it for that reason, but I wasn't really following any creepypasta stories. When Slenderman, the movie trailer, first came out, I kind of went into it with an open mind, because I did, on one hand, I understood why a studio would go after the rights to this really creepy and visually stimulating and eye-catching character. I got it, but it wasn't until I started to watch the trailer that all the memories from the real incident came pouring back, and it felt wrong to me. It felt very, very wrong, and it was making me uncomfortable in a way where it wasn't making me uncomfortable because the trailer was scary on an entertainment value level. It didn't feel right. It felt, it's a cliche thing, but too soon, and it kept bringing the question into mind, where do you draw the line? Because I can't go out and say, oh, this is the line between, because we've seen many movies out there that tap into real life tragedy.
Yeah.
Where do you draw the line between tapping into it in a way that is maybe acceptable and just, hey, like, let loose, it's just a movie, or this is wildly inappropriate and shouldn't be happening? And I think for me, it just comes from a feeling that I wind up having from the finished product. And for me, that feeling is no wrong, this shouldn't have happened.
I think it's going to be different for everybody, that line. My history with the property is different. I was aware of Slenderman before the murder, or the attempted murder.
Yeah.
So it always existed as a side thing in my head. I wasn't like you. I wasn't the biggest creepypasta person, and I wasn't obsessed with Slenderman.
That's a completely different character.
But I had seen the YouTube videos that sort of went viral, and I was aware of the character. I had read there's so many now of the narratives that people made up about him, but I had read some of it, and I was like, why isn't anyone making this movie? The internet just created a myth. Like, that's incredible. Usually we think of these sorts of characters as having been created hundreds of years ago, and this was born out of our internet age. Why isn't this happening? So when the incident happened, it was colored by that, but Slenderman always existed as a separate thing in my head anyway, of why doesn't this exist? The line between what's appropriate and what's not, though, is really interesting and difficult, and I don't think there's a way, like, I don't feel comfortable being like, nobody should make a movie about that because it was very disturbing and it's too sensitive. But that's how a lot of people feel. So how do you find that line? I think of everybody getting up in arms about Tarantino making this movie that has Manson as a figure in it, and those murders, and having to fight my own instinct to preemptively judge and be like, well, that sounds trashy and tasteless. However, I remember very specifically last year when American Horror Story was running, and they did their version of the murders, and I was like, now that's tacky and tasteless. Like, nobody needed that. It's just a play-by-play of watching the murders go down. So Slenderman is something different because it doesn't even touch on the actual crime, and I don't know if that's better or worse.
Yeah. I don't think there was any... It's tough to say this because, I saw what the end... Now that I've seen what the end product is, I guess I really do believe. I don't think that was ever an option for them. I think it would have been worse had they tried to do that. But, taking the quality of the final film out of the equation, it seems like that's probably a better thing still to have stayed away from, because that would have made it, even more uncomfortable potentially for a lot of people out there. Yeah. And you gotta reduce this whole thing to a business perspective also, where that probably wouldn't have gone out and attracted the same type of audience that this Slenderman movie did. And it wound up doing pretty well, or at least exceeding my expectations. Estimates have it at $11.3 million, which is pretty successful for this movie. I think it was budgeted at $10 million, so made back...
It's not going to have legs, though.
No, yeah, probably not.
People
probably not.
hate it.
Yeah,
across the board.
Yeah, and I'm definitely one of them. But I can't fault them for wanting to do it. But you bring up the terms tacky and trashy and tasteless, and I think that's what my biggest problem is in terms of whether or not it was too soon after those events to have made this movie. I think that given what happened, you need to make this movie with some sort of purpose. And I'm not saying it needs to be like, a deep, life-changing examination that's going to affect you for the rest of your life. I think there is still room for a movie about Slenderman to have entertainment value. But to me, I went into this movie, and what I got was pretty much what I expected. And it is just like a complete, tasteless, surface-level way of getting at the Slenderman myth, legend, all of that, because there's so much opportunity, especially having seen, if you want to see good creepypasta material, I've said this time and time again, and I hope more people listen, go watch Channel Zero.
Yeah.
I mean, that to me is the perfect example of taking a story that originated on the internet and expanding it, basically expanding what creepypasta is to begin with, taking a story and running with it and adding to it and embracing this idea of really creative fan fiction. You can go that route. You could also explore it in a way, and this is what I thought they might have wound up doing, which I don't think they did at all, taking the idea of going into how creepypasta and how stories on the internet can seep into your everyday life and affect you and affect these characters. And I think they were kind of scratching at I'm like doing a little kitty cat claw, that's weird. I think they were kind of scratching the surface of that, but without ever digging deep into it whatsoever. I mean, really, the 4 girls in this movie are the prime definition of like bland surface level characters to me, and they were also lifeless too. And these are I'm not familiar with all of the actresses, but I think Joey King probably came the closest to having a little life and charisma to her.
She did a good job, actually. She was the only part that I was like, okay.
I was starting to not really feel the character when she turned into an emotional mess, because I think she jumped from one line of that to the other side a little too abruptly for it to make all that much sense to me. But, I was talking, because this is the weird thing that we do in the Nemrov family. We go and we see these horror movies together. So me, my mom, my dad, and my little sister, we all went and we saw this movie together. And I was talking to Lonnie, my sister, after, and the one who played Haleigh, the main one, which is another problem that I have. Sorry, I have so many negative things to say about this movie, but it's like, who was this damn movie about? Was Haleigh the main character, or was Rainn the main character? And I felt that Haleigh, Julia Goldani Tellez, who my sister knows from The Affair, and she likes her a lot, like, maybe she's capable of more in other roles, but boy, is that role dreary and boring. Her and Jazz Sinclair as Chloe, they just felt like the biggest wet blankets to me.
Yeah. So there is a lot I want to circle back on there.
I couldn't stop.
So something that I was really fascinated by, you kind of touched on, was the idea that like there was a lot of actual opportunity with this movie to do something interesting, which is that, so you can't go back in time and undo the real life tragedy that happened. You can't take that away. So if you want to make this movie in a smart way, it's something you should address, or at least handle with a little taste. And to me, there's such a rich opportunity because it is a myth made out of the internet by the mind of the internet age that then became something real, caused real life harm in a very specific, recognizable way, almost threatened to become some sort of damaging belief system, which I think we have become very aware of, is that the internet causes damaging belief systems. There's so much there that you can reflect on, and how myths are born. And even if you want to take it the supernatural route, that Slenderman is real and he's this thing, like, there's a lot to talk about of the power of belief, and can you believe something into existence and stuff like that. Nope. Nothing. They're like,
you
he's
describe
the
all
virus.
this makes me so sad too.
Yeah.
It's like, what was this about? What was this about? I don't get it.
It's a mess, and you're right, the characters are just a pit. They're like, the main girl, and I know that she is capable of so much more, because I also liked her on The Affair, and I loved her on Bunheads, and like, what is that character, and why is she so willfully stupid? And the emotional levels, like
Wait, I have to bring up a spoiler.
Okay.
I'm going to bring up a spoiler, so you guys have been warned in case you really care about Slenderman spoilers, but what really upset me towards the end for that character is she makes a decision to save her sister, and then she freaking runs away from Slenderman.
Yeah.
Going back on her decision.
That's what
and then gets caught, and that's how the movie ends.
All the emotional levels make no sense. That's a great one. There's there's so many that don't make any sense. So part of it, I think, is that we are watching a very incomplete film. It's very obvious that there are segments, sequences missing from this movie. There are things that were in the trailer that ultimately aren't in there. There's stuff that just happens and disappears, like the boy she's into, how he like clearly watches the videos and clearly has some kind of encounter, and then he's just
That's
disappears.
never addressed.
No. So we're watching some, or this was a favorite. The scene they're in, they go into their friend's room and they go, the police must have taken her laptop. And then the very next scene, they're on her laptop.
Oh, yeah. That list just goes on, and then you can start talking about the parents' involvement.
Oh.
It's like they tried to get some parents involved, and then all of those were dead ends. And the movie had such little visual style, and that bums me out too, because I'm a big fan of Javier Botet and his work. And really, why do you need someone of his caliber as Slenderman? That made no sense to me, because I kept looking for moments where they used him to great effect, and they were not there.
I was shocked when I went home and looked at the cast list, and I was like, what? That was him? I assumed it was just some bullshit CGI, to be honest.
That's kind of what it looked like.
Yeah.
I mean, the whole thing.
What a waste.
And, going back to what we were discussing with the Meg, too, I mean, this was another situation where I was, or not another situation, because I didn't have this with the Meg, but this was a situation where I was in the theater with a bunch of teenagers who kept shouting the entire time. People were talking. The person next to me was opening his phone, and I'm very capable of completely detaching myself to that and saying, Slenderman was a bad movie, period. But that certainly didn't help my experience. No. But the other thing is, Slenderman, what does it clock in at? It is a 1 hour and 33-minute movie. I checked my watch at a point and realized we had only gotten past the first act.
Because it's actually a 47-year movie.
Oh, wow.
That sucks you into a time vortex in which you live a full life, die, are reborn again, and somehow still watching this film.
I mean, there were so many great opportunities to create intriguing rules, too.
What are his powers?
I don't know. I can't explain it to you.
He does stuff.
What are his powers? And then, I got a little excited when they started to tap into the Pied Piper origins, too. I'm like, you're going to create something interesting, and we're going to follow it through history and see how this came to be. Like, no.
It just not.
completely abandons that. And I started to lose track of, like why was a certain someone next even, and what were the rules as to why a certain person was affected in that specific way? Because Jess Sinclair's character seemingly lives, right? Mm-hmm. She doesn't die, but the rest of them die, I guess. And you're
well, they did write them out of that particular corner. They were like, they essentially said he can do whatever the fuck he wants, because they're like, some people he makes insane, some people he kills.
That's not satisfying.
No, it's terrible.
It's
terrible. But they gave them the freedom line to be like, we can do whatever we want. It's a nonsense.
Yeah, I mean,
it's really. I mean, I have to say, as far as the runtime thing, like, I will never use my phone during a film. This was one of the first movies. Ooh. No, I didn't. But I was like, I really wish I knew how much longer I had to sit here, because I don't have a watch.
Yeah.
So I just kept having to not grab the phone and check. And that was one of the hardest times I've ever had not looking at my phone in a film.
My family was very, very angry when we walked out of the movie.
I wasn't thrilled.
They weren't angry at me because I warned them when we bought the tickets, but nobody in the Nemiroff family was happy with Slenderman. And I think one of the things that made it even worse is that, what we did after we left Slenderman and went home for the evening? We watched Beware the Slender Man, the documentary on the true story that was that happened based on this creepypasta legend. And I'm not saying that that movie was so good and so powerful that it makes me hate this one more, but that does remind you how important it is that if you're going to make a story with that kind of true experience around it, you need to do so with a little bit of respect, a degree of respect, because you look at it and it's a really powerful documentary about this terrible, terrible true story. But what the documentary does, which I always find interesting, is that it's not so much about just saying, what those two girls did, that is a bad thing. They went to prison, they got sentenced and all that stuff. It also gives you a really thorough view into how it affected everybody around them, not just the victim, not just the town, but it destroyed those families, the families, the parents of those two girls. It destroyed so many lives, so many people that were around that event. And you know, when you look at that and then you apply this movie and its worthiness of existing to that, it makes it 10 times worse. I mean, this isn't something that happens, and these people that were directly affected by it, whether you're talking about the direct families or that entire town, because there's a theater chain, and that theater chain decided not to show that movie in those counties, I believe.
Correct.
It's so disrespectful. It's so disrespectful that it makes me look down on this Slenderman movie even more so than I would have had I not watched that documentary immediately after. But it really did upset me.
Yeah, I can see that.
It's such a bummer. And you know, you talk about also all the drama that's been around this movie for months now. Whether you're talking about individuals who thought it shouldn't exist to begin with, which I think I fall in that category at this point. And then on top of that, there was all the distributor drama too, where there was a disagreement between the producers behind the movie and the studio who was distributing it, which is Sony and Screen Gems. And you know, in the end, how do you even assess this? Is this a win for Sony and Screen Gems, or should they have let it go?
I'm not gonna call this a win. It might, I mean, like, the box office wasn't a total trash fire, but I really don't think it's going to rake home any sort of money that will justify a studio-level marketing budget. It is critically reviled. It is equally disliked by the movie-going public. It clearly isn't just disliked, it makes people angry.
Yeah.
No, I wouldn't say this is a win.
Like, I'm actually schwitzing right now. I'm that mad. The other interesting wrinkle to all of this is, have you heard of any of the MoviePass news as of late?
What, to do with Slender? I use MoviePass for mine.
So So here's the debacle from the weekend is, you know, every single week at this point, if not every single day, we have a new MoviePass update. So one of the things that happened this past weekend is that many MoviePass users were only given two options this weekend. It was either Mission Impossible and Slenderman, or it was The Spy Who Dumped Me and Slenderman.
Oh my God, that's hilarious.
It has opened up the door to some speculating that maybe MoviePass is aligning themselves with certain studios, and they are only going to push movies because they also sent out, apparently subscribers get emails, and the email this week promoting a certain movie was Slenderman.
Oh my
gosh. Is there even a little more to be concerned about in terms of MoviePass's existence and its relation with studios?
The number one thing that turned me, I've never been anti MoviePass because, like, I figure no matter how you cut it, it's a good deal. But when we spoke with Aaron and Justin, the creators of The Endless, they really pointed out that MoviePass is a benefit to indie filmmakers because people will go see movies they might not necessarily throw down $15 for if it's on their MoviePass. And that really put me in the pro MoviePass camp. So that's one of the biggest, like, blowbacks for the whole idea I've heard yet. That's a bummer.
When we were talking to them, I think that was one of the first times that I was able to kind of, like, dig myself out from under the doom and gloom of what MoviePass could do to the industry and kind of see the light, or what could be the light if you put the focus on smaller movies that might not get seen otherwise. But given everything that's happened since we've had that conversation, and specifically a decision like this,
that's really bad.
It feels manipulative. There's no reason to trust MoviePass as a service. I'm not a MoviePass subscriber, so I have no stake in this issue in terms of me giving them any money. But I feel bad for people out there who are paying for this subscription service and are having things changed on a dime, where they paid for a certain something and now they are getting something else, and it's not what they wanted originally.
I guess if they did the annual, like me, that's kind of valid, but still it was like $80 for a year of any movie you want. I don't know.
It's like, what if you wanted to see 8th Grade this weekend and you just couldn't?
I don't know. I don't feel that bad for people. I just really don't. Because if you're month to month, just cancel. If you're annual, you probably already got in so many movies with your money.
I would hope so.
I don't feel that bad. I mean, like, especially because everybody from the start was like, this is untenable and unsustainable. So, like, don't invest in it if you don't believe in it.
It could have been sustainable, though. It's like, and they could still make it sustainable, but it feels like even after the most recent report where they're saying they're making moves to keep this thing afloat, it feels like all the moves since then are the wrong moves.
Yeah, that I would agree with.
I just don't get it. I don't get it. One other question that I wanted to pose to you is, so creepypasta, the future of different legends out there being turned into a feature film. Does this close that door, or is there more opportunity, and should studios be checking the creepypasta message board for more creative opportunities?
Yes, to that last part. They absolutely should be looking to those stories and not stealing them, but paying people for them, because there are so many great ones. I don't, knowing how the industry is, I think it's incredibly likely that the takeaway from this for studios will be like, well, creepypasta doesn't perform despite all the other problems. But I think, we always talk about it, but Channel Zero constantly shows how much creative juice you can get out of these stories and how you can hand them over to different filmmakers and let them bring their stamp to it. I'm continue to look to creepypasta, but
I did not realize that Slenderman had a D- on Cinema Score.
Oh, people
you're right.
Hate it.
This movie is gonna come and go.
Yeah.
If anything, I hope that the takeaway from this movie, and I don't view this necessarily as a success or failure in that other studios are going to say, well, creepypasta doesn't work, period. I think if anything, Sony and Screen Gems are looking at it as like, oh, washed our hands clean of that. We made out with a decent amount of money at least to not have it be a total loss. But if anything, I hope that studios recognize the fact that, especially as of late, we are seeing high-quality horror perform really well. If you take an interesting story and actually make a good movie out of it, there's a good chance it's going to do well right now. There's a good chance it's going to get a great cinema score, great word of mouth, and you're going to wind up making your money back. Then, when you take this, and I hate this term, but it feels like I need to use it, the cash grab approach. That is what this is. Hot thing, let's just churn it. And I don't want to imply that nobody worked hard on this, because we were talking about it before. Human beings made this movie. A lot of people, whether you're talking about it from a writer level or even just crew members who worked really hard making this feature film, I don't want to imply that they didn't work hard doing it. But you need more than a surface level treatment of something like this. You need to actually say something. And if that means keeping the script in development for a longer period of time, getting rewrites and rewrites until you hit on that little nugget that makes it worth adapting and worth seeing, then don't do it, because you're going to wind up in this kind of situation. And it's unfortunate, but Channel Zero gives me a whole lot of hope. And I hope that there are producers out there who are aware of that, because Channel Zero, I think, doesn't it kind of does. I was going to say that it doesn't really tap into, like, I want there to be a movie about creepypasta, period. Okay. I want there to be a feature film out there that addresses the horror that can come from the spread and the growth of a story like that. I think there's so much room to breathe and so many things to play with in that respect. Whereas, Channel Zero does specifically focus on one story. But, even, No End House just came to mind. And it's like No End House taps into the idea of having a tall tale, or what you think is spread to the point where so many people converge on that one location where they think the No End House is going to be, and how that spreads, and it continuously traps people into kind of that cycle to a degree. So I think it's in there a little, but I want to see more creepypasta stories being adapted to full features, and I also want to see someone out there tackle the idea of creepypasta, period.
It's interesting because we are having such a strong 2 years for horror right now. They can't get away with Slenderman. In other years, because horror always goes sort of in these cycles where it gets really good for a while, then it gets really popular, and then they're like, oh, let's make more horror movies, but they stop putting in the time and effort to make them good. And so it sort of crash and burns again, and this happens over and over and over again. So if you're in a crash phase of the horror cycle, you can put out Slenderman and kind of get away with it and still make some good money. And because there's not a lot else around. But in a year with A Quiet Place and Hereditary and even something like The First Purge, which not everybody loved but had interesting things to say and good production value, like you just can't get away with something like this.
I think the only reason they semi got away with it from, like making your money back, I guess, is because it came out at this time of the year. It came out in the beginning of August. It's been over a month since we saw The First Purge. I think the horror-going crowd wanted something and would have taken whatever they could get, which, I fall victim to that all the time, where it's just like, if it's been X amount of weeks since I've seen a wide-release horror movie, I'll see whatever's out there.
Right.
I think that's pretty much the reason why they wound up in a not so terrible position business-wise, but it's a very good point, and I hope the quality thing continues for the rest of the year, because next up is The Nun, and after that is Halloween, and
oh gosh, there's
so
many.
And Hellfest.
There's so many over the next 2 to 3 months. It's insane.
Yeah,
my review calendar is
it's that time of year.
Actual migraine just to look at it.
It's that time of year, and I'm quite pumped about it.
Yeah.
Have you seen any Halloween things out there?
Mm-hmm.
I'm like waiting for Halloween to kind of flood all the stores at this point.
Oh, that kind of Halloween.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. I'm so happy to see it. I thought you meant Halloween the movie.
Oh, no. Someone on Twitter did send me a really cool picture of their new Halloween Converse sneakers, and I kind of want to buy them.
Oh,
so
nice.
it's Halloween Converse sneakers, and it's got a picture of Michael Myers on it, and instead the knife is the Nike swoosh. I really want that.
That's fun.
I really want that. All right. I guess that's it for our Slenderman and the Meg episode of the Witching Hour.
Any last minute rage you want to get out before
Last
we
minute
wrap
rage.
this up?
Man, I mean, yeah. My heart's just like, I mean, it sounds dramatic, but it's like situations like this feels like someone like ripped my heart out and stepped on it. Just like, especially when you see something with any potential at all, and then it's kind of used and abused to this effect. It's really unfortunate. And if you haven't seen the HBO documentary Beware the Slender Man, it's a very, very disturbing but worthwhile watch, where the filmmakers behind that really took the time to kind of get into everybody's head and really create a very, very layered, effective kind of jump into that whole situation, and it's an interesting watch, to say the least. But yeah, sucks.
So
sucks
see
that we wound up with
instead of
this.
this.
Pretty much. High hopes for creepypasta in the future, though.
Heck yeah,
Don't give up on
coming
that.
back soon.
Oh my God! Did you hear the news today? Barbara Crampton's going to be in Channel Zero season 4.
Oh, was that news?
Yes,
I
it
already
was.
knew that. Yay, Barbara!
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I saw that headline today, and I'm quite pumped.
Yes,
Channel Zero
she's
season
awesome.
4, directed by E.L. Katz.
Yeah.
Cheap Thrills. So I've been eager to see him come back and do a little more. And really, there's no better alignment than his name with Channel Zero. So
Sounds good.
I am pumped. Any last minute words from you, Haleigh? Or are you all good?
I'm good. I have thumbs up Meg, thumbs down Slenderman.
There's your wrap up for the episode. Haleigh, where can everyone find you on the internet?
You can find me every day on Collider.com. You can find me on Twitter at Haleigh Fouch, and you can find me on Instagram at Haystack McGroovy.
And I am on Twitter and Instagram at PNemiroff. Don't hesitate to tweet at us when you watch or listen to this episode, as we love to talk about these topics, even more than on this one single hour. But for now, you have survived the Witching Hour.